So welcome to the Heart Awakening interview series, and tonight we have a very special guest. His name is DERRICK WHITESKYCLOUD, and DERRICK is a psychic medium and a paranormal investigator. And we've invited him tonight because he has a very important message to share with the world. And DERRICK, just to start, I'd like to ask you, how did you become a psychic medium?
How did I do? Oh, okay.
Or do you become a psychic medium?
Well, I guess we'd say we always talk about the accident. Mine is a near-death experience.
Okay.
I was killed in a car accident, and when I was 18 years old, I rolled my truck. Typical kid, 18. You know, he had a '64 Ford, floor on the floor, and I rolled my truck into the ditch off of gravel road and flipped it 3 times. And I remember hanging on the steering wheel. All I can see is white light. And next thing I know, I'm on the other side.
Oh.
And but when I woke up, I saw the truck land on its wheels, and I'm laying on the ground on my back looking up, and the roof is caved in on the driver's side, and I don't know how I got out, but all I know is thinking to myself, my father's going to kill me, you know, because I just got that for my birthday, this truck, right? So what happened was, after that, I thought, okay, I'll get smart, because it's a standard, so I got on the passenger side, and I turned the truck back on and rolled it back out and got home. But when I got out of the truck, I think the awakening was when my mother noticed that there was something come from my forehead. She saw blood come from my forehead, and she thought I got cut, and my mother couldn't find the cut. But typical moms, you know what they're like, they just take a tea towel, they lick their fingers and trying to see where that cut is. There's nothing there, but it kept on seeping through the skin.
Really?
Yeah, and I didn't know what it was until later on years. An elderly woman told me one day, she said that I had stigmata. I didn't tell the story. She says, oh, you're a stigmata. What was that? I didn't know what it meant. I'm just still young yet, understanding it. And in time, I understood the story, and I thought, okay, maybe something to do with awakening. And I did more research on it, and I didn't realize that a lot of people sometimes will go through stigmata. And they call it the blessing of the Christ or blessing of the Spirit. So it means you're brought back from a near death. And that's what I went through the first time. Then years later, through my late 20s, I started noticing more and more things happening to me. The word psychic never even came into thought because no one really knew what that word never came up in the subject at all. That was back in the 70s. And then I got into my, I would say, late 20s, where I met my third wife, and I started noticing things happening to me more. And then I met this fellow named Ron, and actually he found me because I was shopping with my wife in the store, and in a thrift shop. He figured that. So we were shopping around, and my wife was trying on some clothes, and she never mentioned my name out loud, so I let people know that, because some people think, well, maybe he must have mentioned my name, but didn't. And so I'm walking around while my wife is trying some things on, and typical guy, you know, you want to look at a shirt or you look at a book, whatever have you. And I noticed this man come in the door, and I thought, okay, you know, customer comes in the door, and he's looking around like this, you know, like this. And I thought maybe he was looking for somebody, but I didn't pay any attention to that. So I was walking towards the clothing, and I look at one of the shirts, and I was looking at the shirt and like this, and lay it down back on the hook, and I'm walking away, and I'm heading towards another shelf at something else. And then I heard this word, I thought, what the heck's this? I'm looking back, and here the guy already had the very same shirt in his hand that I had in. And then I hung up, and then I started heading to the book section, because I love novels. And so I'm went to the book section, and I found a book, I'm looking at it, pulled it out, and next thing I heard this, put back again. Now the very same item that I picked up on the shelf, he had in his hand as well.
Wow.
So I never understood what he was doing. Well, I just kept on going, you know. And so later on, I thought, I'll go see how my wife is doing. So while she's doing her trying on her clothes, so I walk over there and see how she's doing. And next thing you know, a matter of 2 or 3 minutes, this same fellow walks up to me, and he has this fuzzy hat in his hand. And he looks at me and he says, "Can I ask you a question?" I said, "Sure." He says, "What do you think of this hat?" He pops it on his head, and I'm looking at him like, "Nah, it doesn't suit you." doesn't suit you. And he says, I didn't think so. So he takes off the hat, puts it down. He says, are you Derrick?
Mm.
And I said, yeah, how do you know me? And he goes, I don't know you. He says, I said, well, how did you find me? What is it, what do you want to ask me about? Or what is it? You know, he says, my director sent me to you. Oh, who are your directors? And he says, do you understand mediums, psychics, spirits? I says, oh yeah. He says, do you have interest in that? I said, oh, big time. I've always been curious about it because I have these things happen to me. I've always been looking for a teacher, but I really had no success in finding anybody. And I didn't know who to go to. And he says, well, I'm going to tell you something about you. Do you mind if I give you a message? I said, sure. He says, when you're a young man, and he's telling me things about myself when I was a kid that no one even knows. No one. I'm sitting there going like, oh my God, this guy's good. So he said, would you be interested in wanting to get training? He says, I'll spend 6 months with you and train you. He said, you'll be just as good as I am. He said, I want to let you know this. He said, I work for the RCMP. I'm not an officer. My son is. But he says, I've been working for the RCMP since I was in my young years. And he was in his late 60s then. This is many years back. And he said, I'll train you. And he says, after I'm done training you after 6 months, he says, I'm gone. Then you're on your own. I said, okay, sure. So he wanted to meet my wife, and we went out for tea. And he said, you want to train now? I said, now? He goes, yeah. What do I have to do? He said, come with me. And I followed him 3 blocks away from this restaurant with my wife and myself. And he looked at me and he says, you tell me what you get from this area, what you feel. Now, the interesting part, before I even got to the location, I could feel my heart pounding really hard. And it wasn't excitement, it was a different feeling. I felt like, oh man, something's hurting inside. Like it's painful, but it's not my heart, because it feels like I'm separated from someone or something. It was something I've never experienced before, but just threw me right off. And he said to me, you tell me what you get from this. You give me the scene. I'm not going to lead you on, I'll just tell you. And so I listened, and I said to him, well, I see this woman laying there, and I was telling the story how she got killed and what was used as a weapon.
Wow.
And who was involved. I described everything to the detail.
So how did you see it? Did you feel it?
I saw the scene. I felt the scene. I saw the blood. There's no blood on the sidewalk. I mean, there was little stains of it, but I could see the scene as if I'm replaying the scene. And I saw them exactly what happened, and I said to him, I said, and he never replied yes or no to me. He just said, keep going, keep going. That's all he said, just keep going, because he knew very well it wasn't done. And I said, the husband killed her, but he wasn't here. He was home, but he set this up by 2 other men that killed her.
Wow.
And he said, you're right. And I said, has this case been solved yet? He says, no. He said, that's why I'm asking you, because you're the one that you'd be telling the police the same stories I told them.
Wow.
But the interesting story was, I said, he's not from here, he's from another country, he doesn't belong here. And he said, you're right, he's from another country, another foreign country. I said, she owned property from the country that she's from, where he's from. She moved here, he killed her, had her killed, went back to his country and took the land. And she goes, yes, that's right. Because he never showed up at the funeral. And they never went out, the police never touched him.
That's amazing. And how did it feel to get all this information?
I was excited. For my first experience in this, I was so excited.
I mean, you were just thrown right in.
Thrown right into it, like here, right like that. And I just went, okay. And I said, how did I do? And he said, you did good. Mm-hmm. He said, but you got to keep it up, keep practicing. Mm-hmm. He said, because he's always told me, you always have to keep your mind open and always trust your heart where it comes from. And he said, be careful of the people that will influence you. And I never understood what he said when people influence you, and that is that people try to tell you the story before you start. And then the story may not be true. So there was a time that I was going to be trained or practice on a location, and someone said to me, "I'm going to tell you the story first, and you go and tell me if whatever actually did happen." And when I got there, and I said, "I don't feel anything here." It's almost like there's no energy. And they looked at me and they said, "You're right." I said, "What do you mean no energy?" They said, "Nothing happened here." But they want me to test me to see if I was good, if I was feeling the energy, or that I wanted to be that way.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Oh, Charlie came to visit. That's Charlie, my dog. And so, Derrick, that was about 30 years ago then?
That happened in 2000 and, sorry, take it back, 1999.
1999,
1999.
okay. And so you've come a long way since that day. So what is it like now?
Now, oh no, sorry, not 299, 1996. It was 96 is when it happened. What it is now, I've really, since then, I've noticed that my skills have really excelled, because I wanted to not just learn about what happened to that person. I want to know by their names. And I want to experience the name, whether it's first name or last name. I want to experience the name, so I would tell them, tell me your name, who you are. So, because I want I guess I would say I want comfort. I want to know exactly what I can get. Because if I feel that I only have just a person there, it doesn't really give me confirmation. I would say if your mother's here, father's here, I want to hear the name. And there's times, a lot of times I'll actually get the first name of the person, sometimes last name. And, or it'll shift the name. And there's people will, how do you say it? There was a friend of mine, lady friend of mine, that I gave a reading for her. And I did some teacup reading. We did something at Christmas time.
Teacup reading? What is that?
A teacup reading is actually, we all had a cup of tea or coffee, and I would read the grounds, the tea grounds, or the coffee grounds. And it's something I experimented with. My mother got a teacup reading when she was a young woman, and she was told who she was going to marry, and she married my dad. They gave the initials of who my father was, and the lady who read for my mom before I was born told her that she would not marry the man that she was with first, and that it wouldn't work out, that she'll be with my father. And my mother goes, "Are you nuts? I'm marrying this guy," who was a biker at the time. Well, apparently my mother was riding the back of his motorcycle with him, and it was a head-on collision into a telephone pole. The guy that was her fiance, and he ended up being vegetable, brain dead, so to speak, and she couldn't marry him. And then 6 months later, my mother had to finally give up the idea of knowing that he was in her life. And then my mother met my dad. And within 6 months after that, they got married. But his initials was exactly GW, exactly the same name what the tea leaf reader told her who she'd marry. So when for some reason I had interest in looking at things that show shapes and figures in a teacup, or even coffee grounds. And I would get an idea of how I would feel, how I would see what the vision looks like. And so I would read the tea leaf or read the cup, and that's how it started. Wow. But there was a lady, there was actually Christmas time one time, and I did a reading for her. And I would do a tea leaf, like after New Year's or after during Christmas, we all have dinner, we all have I give everybody a free tea leaf reading, complimentary tea leaf reading. And this one lady didn't really believe, but she sat there and went, "Okay." And I looked at her and I said, "I need to tell you this." I said, "Who is Fred?" And she looked at me, she goes, don't talk to me about that. And I said, "Fred has a purpose in your life, something to do with you." And I said, "But the man that you were in love with, but you could not have him, but you had, but Fred was in the way." And she goes, "I want to talk about it." And she didn't tell me, and I thought I was wrong when I read her. She took me aside after, privately, and she said it was someone that she cared for a long, long time ago, before anyone came into her life, that she was in love with, and she wanted to be with that person. And she never spoke about his name to anyone ever. That was her secret love.
Wow.
So sometimes Spirit has a way to bring up something of your past, not to hurt your feelings, but just to say reminiscence of, you know, that I remember, or something you want to remember, or just help you think. And, you know, she's crossed over now since then. She's passed away, but she wanted to be with him for a long time.
Yeah.
And I think she went back to him.
So you deal with people all the time. And,
all the time.
And so do you feel that the information that you give them helps them? Do you feel that you're helping people?
I feel I do, because I mean, I really do care to help people. I like to help people a lot. And you know, at times I have my day issues, you know, my daily issues where, you know, you have certain people that have their own hardships and they don't know what to do with themselves, and oh, my boyfriend did this to me, or my husband did that, or my girlfriend did this, my wife that, and then they want to know if the relationship's going to work. And I developed a way of finding out if that relationship is working or not, and it's just by drawing two circles, and then I would see if the relationship's going to work with that person. You know, with a
Cool.
couple, and it tells me that it's an energy, both their energy. I would stare at their energy, yours, example, yours or your husband's. I'd stare at your energies and see how the relationship is working. And then I would look at the areas what needs to be looked at. And then you would have to, you know, make a decision whether you agree or disagree. But that's how I see it. It's not something that it's not there to criticize you. It's there to say, here's some areas that you're missing, or some areas that need to be seen. And when I developed that, everybody comes to see me regarding those areas and say, okay, what I need to work on this part. And they've noticed a big difference in relationships that's helped improve it more.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, that's one of the questions that someone would go to someone like you, is to find out about relationships. What about when they ask you, am I going to meet someone?
I get a kick of that one because a lot of East Indians, for example, the South Asian people, they come and see me. I'm well known in India. Yeah, I've never been to India, but I'm well known there. And a couple young ladies that came to see me, they're from India, but they live here. And they said they went to India just previously, and they saw seven Sikh men standing outside the temple arguing over me. My name came up in subject, arguing about me, and but one of the men was saying, that's not right, that man has no right to have that much power, and the other 6 men were defending me.
Oh.
And yet they didn't know who I was, but they're defending me. But I'm well known up there, they call me the guru.
Really?
Yeah, so that's how far.
So how do you think that happened?
I don't know, it's just because you work with the Indian community, you want to believe, you know, how things are working. And like I said, I get a lot of East Indians come and see me for readings. And the first thing they look at, first of all, is relationships.
Yeah.
Who are they going to have first, or who they want to have, and how long will it take. Then they'll talk about children, how many kids they'll have, and they'll talk about family. And then from there, what kind of job, or what do they think would benefit them as far as work is concerned. Well, the job part of it is, everyone has a decision on work. But I've had a couple of people got upset with me, and they'll say, oh, I don't want you to talk about it. Next thing, they'll walk out the door, and then a few weeks later, or a month later or so, they call me back and they'll apologize to me and say, you know what, I thought you were crazy, but you know what, it all came into fruition. And I said, well, you know, I listen to what Spirit tells me what to tell you. I'm just the messenger.
Right.
Right? It's not about me, it's about what we can help you to do. And that's the main thing, is to help people understand that the path they can take, it's their path, it's not mine, it's nobody else's but their own. There are people out there who like to have their lives controlled, or they like a little push. I like to control the life, I really don't. And I think one part of it that I really do enjoy is when I actually predicted my granddaughter's birth. And I told my daughter that she was pregnant. And she looked at me and said, Dad, I'm not pregnant. I'm not pregnant. I said, you are, you're pregnant. I see pink. It's a little girl, and she's going to be born. She'll be born around mid-March, but she'll be born at a very special time.
Oh, and?
And she goes, no. So a month later, she calls me up and she said, "Guess what?" I said, "You're pregnant." She goes, "Yeah, I don't know how you knew that." I just know it because I see the aura. I just see the energy. And so after she carried her, my granddaughter, she was born on March the 25th during the eclipse.
Oh.
And so they call her Eclipse.
Oh, cool. That's really neat.
Gave her a special name.
Okay.
So I thought it was pretty cool.
And the other thing I know about you, Derrick, is that you are on Z Talk Radio, and you have your own show. Is it a weekly show?
It's a weekly show, every Tuesday night.
And you have all kinds of different guests.
All kinds of guests. I bring on a multitude of guests, say like yourselves, if you enjoy. But I do everything from the paranormal to interest stories to you name it, anything that creates the public attention. People like to experience what's happening out there. It's an internet radio. We have approximately about 7 million listeners, about 72 countries picking us up. 72 countries, that's a lot of countries.
That's a lot of countries.
And
it's Z Talk Radio.
Z Talk Radio, letter Z.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I made
so
a
we would say
commercial
Z Talk Radio in Canada.
Well, actually, I made a commercial on it. You say Z, I say Z. And so I said, no matter which way you say it, it's still talk radio.
Right. And you've also written a book.
I've also written a book called Spiritual Journeys with White Sky Cloud.
Great.
Wrote this book 12 years ago, 12 years ago. And I'm working on my second one now.
Wonderful.
So.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Derrick, for joining us this evening.
You're welcome.
And that's it for tonight.